go live there. Cool. Okay, we are live. Hey there, friends. This is Dana checking in. We are doing a unscheduled live today because of Biden's sudden announcement last night. I am here with a friend of mine who has been very active in, in her school and her community with her local advocacy groups and in a number of different realms before we got to this point, but they all kind of tie in with the idea of medical freedom, bodily autonomy, things that, I would hope we'd be all on the same page about, but it appears as though we are not on the same page. So we're just going to discuss today how to file religious exemptions. A number of businesses have already come forward and said that they're going to require their employees to take the COVID-19 vaccine. And just even saying that is probably going to get this shadow banned. So before I think of it, before I lose the train of thought, please give it a thumbs up. It does help feed the algorithm monster and reach more people, and that's what we're trying to do. The thing we were discussing before. Now, Biden came out yesterday and kind of made his little speech about that any business with more than 100 employees has to either my understanding is either have employees vaccinated or have employees tested weekly. Yes, now, my bent is that employers are not going to want to test weekly because that's money out of their pocket. Yeah. So it's much easier to just, mandate or say that employees have to. Yeah. Right. So what we were talking about, I think, is the difference between a mandate and a law. Right. And so I'm hoping we can talk a little bit about the types of questions that people are allowed to ask. Anybody that's had experience in human resources should really know that a lot of these topics are like off limits. But I know you have some examples of the very intrusive questions that are being asked and also some of the legalities of filing a religious exemption.
Yeah. Examples of questions, asking details of your religious belief that would exempt you from getting this vaccine. And I think what they're trying to get at is like scripture, different arguments, like people will use, aborted fetal cell argument. Right. Very common ones are like, keeping the blood clean. Mm-hmm. So,
like Jehovah's Witnesses,
yes,
blood products.
Yes. But the problem with
I almost feel like they have an easy out because they've always been against this from the beginning. And they draw the line in the sand. Also, their church stands very tall behind them in enforcing that, which I think.
And I think it's very widely known that they do. So it's like if you claim a religious exemption and you say you're of that denomination, they're like, okay, fine.
Yeah, there are certain denominations that are like, oh, and then that's even weird because isn't that in and of itself some form of discrimination on the basis of religion? Mm-hmm. But what? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna. So the problem with divulging any kind of details like that is it's kind of ammunition for the employer, or I mean, even if we go to like universities, like their level, to have something to deny it, like to deny the request. So that's the big thing. If you're filing for a religious, whatever they call it, accommodation, exemption, like there's all different terms.
Some of these words, just even the verbiage on some of this is really even offensive from the beginning.
Yes. Really, the advice is to keep it super simple and not divulge anything. They do not have the right to ask what denomination you are, what church you belong to, what the details of your religious beliefs are that would, violate getting this vaccine. How would that violate any belief that you have? Just outright saying that it's just your religious belief, and making it very clear that they're private. And the biggest thing I think across the board is making it clear that it's sincerely held. That is actually, I've seen that in their forms. Okay. Yes. It's really important, like just to say,
this is my held.
Yes,
quote sincerely held religious belief. Okay,
which is private. Meaning like hands off. Don't ask me about it.
Right.
And
if it's illegal in a job interview, it's illegal at any other time.
Yes, at any time of your employment.
Yeah.
Like if you've been there 2 years, 5 years, 15 years, like it's still illegal.
It's still illegal.
So that's illegal. And also the other thing that we're frequently seeing now is to get basically a pastor, a religious leader to sign off on this.
Right. We need to kind of we need to get into that.
So the problem with asking your religion is that they can say, well, like say I say, okay, well I'm Catholic, and this is I'm not Catholic, but
this is an example.
But they can say, well, the Pope has said. Yeah. And as we've discussed before,
don't even get me started on Pope. Okay, I don't have time today. I got to pick the kid up. I'll be late.
Yeah. But we had talked to you before, Dana, about like how all of these churches are just most of the major organized religions have just been like. I'm
not sure about the Methodists, but I think Episcopal, Catholic,
definitely Episcopal, definitely.
I mean, I'm just going to assume. Yeah. I'm curious about the Baptists and the Southern Baptists because maybe it's the Southern Baptists that maybe have more of the rules or religious guidance around even not consuming alcohol or caffeine or not dancing or any of these more fundamental religions. Let's just say.
Right. Yeah.
What I'm really curious about, and I would love to know, is how people have it's fair to say that we both come from a Christian background. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty familiar with how those different churches and the different folks within those churches are handling this, and even how pastors are handling this, which, some churches I think are doing a little bit better of a job than others. But so I'm curious if people of other faiths are going to feel empowered enough to claim these types of religious exemptions because they are living in a place where the predominant religion is Christian, Christian Catholic, some kind of, just to even I'm thinking from the point of say a Muslim woman. Mm-hmm. Might not feel comfortable filing this. I just feel like it's even an imposition on your religious freedom to ask you these questions and make you fill out a form.
Yes.
So I think what you've done has been extremely clever in that she has chosen she has used the language that is legally required in order to file this exemption. And the other thing I did want to talk about is that there are two schools of thought. So just to address that, there are two schools of thought. Some people say when filing a religious exemption that it is best to keep it short and sweet because it doesn't leave room for them to deny anything. There is, however, another school of thought that is complete, of course, because we can't, because there's no middle ground. We have to swing the pendulum one end all the way to the friggin' other. Yes. So then, there is also another school of thought that what you should do is almost give them so much information that it would be hard to. Nobody would basically want to have to sit there and go through 5 pages to dig a hole in whatever it is you're saying. They're like, okay, it must be sincerely held if you're willing to give me a 5-page essay. I think is the idea.
I think that's the idea too. I think that's right on.
Yeah.
Like you can't. Like I said, the primary thing that I've seen in writing on take my husband's form that I just had to help him fill out. It's for work. They do say sincerely held. It said it on the form.
Oh, it does say it. Okay, well that's
so yeah, you're right. If I'm giving you 5, 6, 7 pages of scripture
it's pretty sincere.
And different yes, of why this is against my we're not going to question the how sincere you are.
Right.
But it also just it begs why not just say it's my private beliefs.
Right.
And I'm allowed to have them, and they're allowed to be private, and they're allowed, it's
the concept that you would even have they would ask that you and I think we discussed off camera before that so many people are just not going to be bothered with it.
No.
Or not going to be bothered with seeking the exemption. Or
I think there's a big misconception, and I don't know, as we get into this, it's not you do not have to be affiliated with a church to file this is what I had to say to a couple people in my husband's work. people think, oh, well, religious exemption, I don't even go to church, so I can't even.
Right, thank you.
And then if they see the form and it says, well, we need your pastor's signature, they're like, all right, well, throw up my hands, I can't do this, I guess I have to get the shot.
Right,
so I think that really, like, that's the misconception. That's the, I try to stress that, like, that's the first thing I say to people, like, you can file a religious exemption and you do not have to be a churchgoer.
Right.
You don't need, I don't know if you want me to get back into that with the actual legalities of that.
Yeah, well, I think I think maybe even just hearing, like, if you have the question, if we can pull the question up, and just the way I want people to hear even. So and honest to God, this is one of the things I've been thinking about doing as like a small podcast that could be done daily, is to basically take like one news story of the day and break it down. Like, how can you see through the propaganda, the nonsense, that they're asking these questions that are intrusive, that are beyond their legal ability to ask, and like, what, how do you kind of dig through that? So I kind of want to hear the whole question and then dig through like the legalities of even what they're asking at this point, because it's really something.
Right. So this is from the accommodation request form at my husband's place of employment, and this is the religious accommodation. So the first question that they do ask, it says, please specify the sincerely held, that's where the language is, religious belief, practice, or observance that is the basis for your request for accommodation. So they want you to go into detail here. The answer, if you want to be on the conservative end, like we talked about, like just not divulging
anything. Which I think is where I would fall. I mean, that's where I fall too.
I'm a more private person anyway, so it's like,
right. That's why you're on camera.
Exactly.
Right.
I don't want to tell you what I really believe, and it's not really your business.
It's not your business. Yes.
So it's just a simple statement that it getting this whatever. I mean, because you can file this for masking too as well, but this would violate my sincerely held private religious beliefs, period.
That's it.
That should be it. And so what I did, how I did answer that is I did say that question. Hold on, I found it.
And the interesting thing is, like, where the form that she's looking at, where the question is listed, there's obviously space for a lot of it's a solid paragraph or more worth of space. So the implication then, and even asking the question in that manner, and I love the idea, I think this is what blows my mind, right? The way that question, can I just see the question again? I'm like, where does it start? Here? Right. Please specify the sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance that is the basis for, here's what rubs me. I figured it. That is the basis of your request for accommodation. The implication is that by you not participating in a medical procedure, you are somehow requesting accommodation. An accommodation is like, I'm tired, may I sit and do my job instead of standing. That is an accommodation. You're asking your employer to do something to make it possible for you to do your job. That is not what is happening here. Nobody. Okay, so I figured out what pissed me off about that. I knew something about that question was upsetting me. And so what you put is perfect. It violates my sincerely held religious beliefs to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. My religious beliefs are my own and are private. End of story. You do not have to divulge all of your faith to these people.
And so where that, the legality, that last sentence, the religious beliefs are my own and are private, in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it's Title VII, you write them in Roman numerals, BII. Yes. It states that a religious belief does not have to align with any specific church or organized religion. Basically, like, I read.
So this is something guaranteed by the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Yes. Okay. And that is what you want to cite. It shows that you kind of know a little something about your rights and
the law.
Yeah. It's not just like, hey, I don't want to do this.
And again, guys, like here's another thing to even bring it back to is we even hear a lot like, oh, it's just a mask. Oh, it's just a shot. Oh, it's just this. Oh, you people and your rights are so picky. If you would go back to, say, 1963, and ask how the people there felt about that,
Right.
it would not be this completely lazy, complacent attitude that people tend to have now. The fact that your right to your private religious belief is guaranteed all the way back in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 suggests that it's something of importance.
Yes.
And that by upholding our religious rights, we are not expecting any special accommodation.
Mhm.
It's really they literally have to do nothing to accommodate.
Yeah.
To accommodate.
Yeah. And so that whole statute has been upheld. There's actually two different cases.
Okay.
So there is case precedents, Supreme Court case precedents of that it doesn't have to, so when you can say, okay, well, I'm Lutheran,
right,
but I've looked at the Bible and this is how I interpret it,
mm-hmm.
and that's my religious belief.
Right.
It does not have to adhere to the Lutheran doctrine,
mm-hmm.
or any name any religion that you might be.
Yeah.
So it's
CBS. They love me, man. It's like they call me more than any boyfriend I ever had. Woo! CBS. Woo! They love me. Bringing in extra bucks, baby. Trying to drag me back in. Buy another shade of lipstick.
Yeah. So
well, and you know what? I'm sorry to just jump in, but it kind of leads me to, and I'm thinking of a specific person who actually may or may not be watching. So I'm actually thinking of two people, Heather and Teresa. If you guys are tuning in, hit the thumbs up, please. And but what I'm thinking of is that they both tend to practice more. So I'll speak more to Teresa because I know her personally. I know that she practices what she would consider. She would say, "I'm not religious, I'm spiritual." Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot of people, I think, now that would subscribe to that belief system. And so when you, so all that to say that even again, the to drive home, you do not have to be part of an organized church. You do not by law have to have anything signed by any clergy member, by any religious or faith leader of any kind. Mm-hmm. But then, and here's the confusing part too, because they keep kind of insisting that you're requesting a special accommodation, because that is not the only question that is on the form. There are multiple questions that are basically the same question over and over again. Mm-hmm. So then at that point, what are the legalities about heading into like the next section? Is that, so you claim the Civil Rights Act that it's sincerely held private religious belief, that the fact that it's private is protected by the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and that is the end of it. You do not have to disclose any further what your religious beliefs are.
No details.
No book you believe in, no church you go to, no pastor that, is used to seeing your face and collecting a couple bucks. It doesn't have to be any of that in order for you to file a religious exemption.
Right.
But then we move on to, I guess, the next set of questions, which are just as intrusive and illegal.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got here, but here we are.
Yeah, you're talking about the accommodation one.
Yeah.
Really
please describe.
Yeah.
So how would you answer this, guys? Like, if you're listening, because really, when she first sent me the question, I guess as a screenshot or whatever, and I read it, I can't begin to think as a person working in HR. I just don't know what kind of answer they were expecting. Mm-hmm. So this question's so bizarrely worded.
So it's a little confusing because they call this form the accommodation form. So
that's their wording.
Right. But then when you talk about accommodations, like, okay, I'm requiring this exemption. So they're supposed to accommodate you in some way, which usually means masking up. Like, this is what it's been so far. Like, if you
testing
or whatever, or both, or which is what I'm sure they're going to require. Mm-hmm. But so when they use this word accommodation, it's like, are you? Right. So the question is, please describe the specific accommodations that you are requesting at this time, including an explanation of how the requested accommodations will enable you to meet your religious obligations without impacting your ability to meet the required or essential functions of your job as set forth in the attached job description. Well,
holy run-on sentence. What the hell is that even?
It's so confusing and
so obtuse.
So I just kept it very simple. I said I require an exemption for a medical procedure, the COVID-19 vaccine,
Mhm.
based on my sincerely held and private religious beliefs. And then I said, this
Broken
is
record,
yes,
guys.
literally
Record.
literally the same answer
Over
for
and
the
over.
first 4 questions of this form. Like because I feel like they were trying to ask the same thing from a different angle to
Just
get you
to
to reveal more details. Yeah. So I continued on and said, this does not physically make me unable to perform my job. Because it doesn't. If I don't get a vaccine, or not myself, it's but if an employee does not get a vaccine, it doesn't make them incapable of performing their job. So and just for reference, my husband's job cannot be done remotely. This is a physical, in-person job. Yes, he has to be there. Yeah. So it's not. So it's a really confusing question. Really, just kept repeating, and they wanted to know like how it's going to. And the other thing is that I kind of wanted to throw in, but I didn't because I didn't want to.
She wanted to add a layer of snark.
Yeah, I did. My husband has been a faithful employee for 17 years at this company. Does not call out, comes in for overtime when people call out frequently. Like they call him and they know he'll come into work. He does his job well. They value. I know they value, at least at the lower level, his supervisors value. So when they ask, like, performing to meet the required functions of your job as set forth in the attached job description, well, he agreed to certain requirements when he took the job 17 years ago, and now you've changed the game. Right.
Change rules in the middle.
Yeah, and now what? Now I have to agree to this.
Right.
So I didn't want to, I'm like, okay, I won't push that much.
Yeah. But then so many folks are just going to.
Yeah. So that's for the next round, maybe. Yeah. When they come back in question, it's like, whoa, why are you? So it goes on, the form goes on.
More questions.
Yes.
More intrusive questions. And basically, so the concept is we're just repeating ourselves over and over and over again and citing the specific law, not citing a specific religious belief. Because once you cite a religious belief, there's always the opportunity for somebody to find a hole in the story, as it were.
To pick it apart.
Pick it apart. Yeah.
So the final question, well, I guess it's the second to final question. What are some other accommodation options that might address your needs? So
if your need is to not take a shot, what other accommodation options could one possibly expect?
Right. And what would I? Yeah.
What kind of answers are they expecting to questions like these?
I don't know. So here I did push a little.
I don't think so. I think you asked very valid questions, and I think they need to be questioned.
And just because I know, and I don't know, they're asking the employee to, like, okay, how can we accommodate you, basically? So I said, what accommodations will said company,
the blank company,
make according to their duty to accommodate of Section 701J of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, in order to not discriminate against my religious rights and without penalization, which includes reduced wages, reduced hours, being furloughed, or removal of employment in any way, which is all.
Of course, that's my husband.
Which is all written in that section that I cited. So they do have a duty to accommodate within the Civil Rights Act, and that's on the employer, not employee to do. To say, okay, well, I require these accommodations. It's not. That's not. So I'm saying that it's against my religious rights, but you have to, above all, not violate my religious rights by reducing my wages.
Civil rights.
Right. Well, yes, and so it falls under that. Religious is civil. So, they cannot discriminate. Like once I've said, once somebody says I'm filing a religious accommodation, it's kind of like they're on notice, and it's like, we gotta be careful where we go. Yeah. So the fact, I just am floored that they asked all this.
Right,
So,
because the
yeah.
thing is, it has to be turned back on them because because of the language that they use, and the implication that you are supposed to disclose this information. It's beyond. It's even beyond, like, I like what another friend of ours mentioned about, how much medical information are we going to be expected to disclose moving forward? Like, does this end with the COVID-19 shot, or are we also talking about a flu shot? Like, are we talking about like okay, and so you get it, right? But now they're saying potentially a booster every 3 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what now? We're really, is that the plan?
Yeah.
And at what point do people kind of like wake up to the fact that this is all?
And where does it even end?
Yeah.
Is there an end?
And I think it only ends when we stop complying.
Yeah.
But that information is hard to find too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if maybe later on I can go in and kind of, even if you could send me that screenshot, and I'll, scratch some of it out and just kind of put that up there in the description box for people that want to circle back, as it were, to that information so that they can file religious exemptions, because it's only going to get more crazy. The more the thing is that the more we submit, the more they will ask.
Yes.
And I think we're at the point now where, like, using a slippery slope argument is so overplayed, because the slope is like so
we're already
that we've become a country, a nation, families that are literally divided over this topic, that are not seeing each other, grandparents not having contact with grandbabies. All I can think about is, like, my mom, who was an RN now, would have never stood for this. And I don't know if that's part of that, like, attitude that she developed in me, where, like, somebody tells me I have to do something and I immediately want to question why. Why do I have to do it?
Okay, why?
Oh, I have to get this free thing? Like,
yes.
Oh, the shots, it's free, huh? Where's my free gym membership?
Yes.
Or my free salad bar that I can go to every day and get myself a nice healthy salad?
Yeah.
Like, where's the free, to tell me this is for my health? Like, I'm just not. Did you see the lady from Australia talking about the New World Order?
No.
She said the part out loud. She said, we'll have to see how these restrictions fit into our New World Order. Like, she just straight said it.
Is this the?
It's on tape. I mean, you can easily search it.
Yeah. Oh,
and she's the one that's, like, all a mess looking. Like, not for nothing, but she's not like the picture house.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, she looks she looks gaunt and pale, like she really needs to go outside and be in the sun, which is precisely what you need if you're going to fight a respiratory virus, for your vitamin D levels to be really high.
Yeah.
Not that we're giving any medical advice.
No, I know.
But
don't say that.
Consult your doctor, please.
Yeah. Just the one last question.
Yeah.
And this is where, so my husband's company said that they might need confirmation. They might need to confirm the religious practices or belief. They might need to discuss the nature of your religious beliefs, practices, or an accommodation request with your religion's spiritual leader, if applicable.
It's wild they even put that question there, really.
Or they go on, or religious scholars, or obtain documentation from a religious leader, which is like a signature or signing off, or other authority. So it asks, if requested, can you obtain documentation or other authority to support your need for an accommodation? So it's a yes or no, like, checkbox. And I kind of, like, really extended in the no section. Yeah, I just went into, like, a little paragraph stating my right to religious freedoms protected by both the U.S. and PA constitutions. My religious beliefs do not have to align with any church or organized religion. Repeating that again. Asking for additional documentation or to speak with my religious leader without reason violates the law and my rights under, again, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What they are allowed, employers actually are allowed to ask for additional information if they have reasonable knowledge that you're citing a religious belief is false. Like say, okay, they heard from so-and-so that you are completely not religious, or you completely, or you're an atheist or whatever. Like, how would they get that information?
Right.
Okay. So this is flat out without reason. Like there's no prior knowledge, there's no prior, like, and so it actually does violate the Civil Rights Act. It is against the law. So that's where, and of course, both the PA and the U.S. Constitutions, you know, we are, you know, allowed our religious freedoms.
Go figure.
Yeah.
End of the day.
End of the day. And everything like that supersedes anything. Mm-hmm. So,
so you have a couple different things to fall back on for religious exemptions.
Right. And the one other thing I just want to say, add in, is any correspondence, if you can, get it in writing.
Everything should be in writing.
Everything should be in writing. So I did add at the bottom of the form, if additional correspondence is needed, please do so in writing via email. Mm-hmm. And I advise my husband and to tell any of his coworkers that if anyone calls, which they will. Yeah. I'm sure they're going to call them and just say,
same goofy
I
person.
need,
the form in the first place. So we call him.
Yes, and actually your advice is great. I've been advised to kind of imply.
I've been advised
to get everything in writing.
Might have been your nosy neighbors advised you, but that's okay. You've still been advised. You've been advised. So yeah, it's basically just to say that you've been advised that any further communication should be in writing.
Yeah.
And it sets the tone for the fact that they're not going to be able to kind of like bully or coerce you in any way. And that it puts them on notice that like you're keeping track of what they're saying too. Mm-hmm. So, so I think that kind of wraps everything up in a nice bow. But moving forward, we're just going to, the other thing to mention while we're at it is just in terms of school.
Yeah.
In Pennsylvania too, there are medical, religious, and philosophical exemptions available in Pennsylvania for all school children. So again, a lot of times the difference between like a mandate and a law is that people will say, oh, well, your kid has to be vaccinated to get into kindergarten.
Yeah.
And they leave off the little asterisk unless you file a religious, medical, or philosophical exemption.
Yes. And philosophical is just, it's a moral objection, which I
don't know if we would all morally object to people being forced into medical procedures without their consent. Like that to me just seems like such a universally acceptable principle that the fact that people are rolling over for it boggles my mind.
Mm-hmm. Wait, you said you
go off on a rant here. I'm trying not to cuss. I'm trying to be nice because talking about religious things. So I'm assuming there's religious people watching.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be nice. So yeah, it just, I think again, so like the key points to take away is that it's sincere, privately held religious belief. You do not have to explain what that is because of the 1964 Act, Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
You also, in order to file a religious exemption, do not have to have you do not have to belong to any one specific religion. You do not have to belong to a specific church, organization, house of worship, religious decree or belief or creed or whatever.
Your beliefs are your own and do not have to align with any existing religion. Mm-hmm. That's like, bottom. And you do not have to have a pastor or a religious leader sign off.
Yeah. And I think the fact that line is even there can be for people, again, like people that are more like on the spiritual end of the spectrum that don't belong to a specific house of worship.
Or and I think there are
the good news is we are all protected, friends. This is our Christian and our Muslim friends and this is all of our friends. So and even our friends that might be more on the agnostic side or still searching, we're all entitled to that privately held religious belief.
Yeah.
Thank you, Quakers, for that. I don't know how things are going in other states. I know a couple governors are going to go ahead and file suit, but in the meantime, while all this legality is being worked out in some cities, like in our city, there is like a mandate for this. So it's coming, and I'm sure that I will shortly have my husband's own form to be assisting him with. But I know there are a couple people in his work and in his union that have said that they're not going to get it. And so there is support within the community.
Yeah.
You know, the member community of the union.
And that's, I think the other thing is there's strength in numbers. So if you do know of other employees.
Hi, wow.
Uh-oh. We got makeup remover?
Yeah.
It's strength in numbers, as I was saying. If you do know of other employees, just to inform them, you know, they can file religious exemptions. You don't have to be religious like you think you do, and then just banding together.
Yeah,
because if there's only like one or two people, and everybody else folds, it's very easy for the company just to push and push and push. So, you know, but I know at my husband's company, in his like section alone, he thinks there's 30 people that aren't like, which is a good, it's almost like 60% of the people that work in his like section that aren't vaccinated yet. Yeah. So, and I know a lot of them don't want to get it, but I'm afraid a lot of them will just fold not knowing information.
See, because I'm hearing like, so some of the things I've heard is that about 75% of America is 75. Really? She knows I'll allow it because I got to wrap up what I'm doing. She's a total sneak butt. That's all right. I love her anyway. I completely
75%.
Thank you. 75% of people of Americans are what's the word?
Able,
they're able to qualify, that are able, that have been vaccinated. But I feel like maybe it just has taken time to break people down to get to that 75%. But I just feel like, you know, the people there's enough people holding out to rein this monster in. Maybe
I feel that way too.
That is our sincerest hope as we head into the weekends. I will be ending things here. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll go back later and try to add some of that verbiage in terms of like the legalities. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate your time very much and hope you all have a great weekend. Bye. Get out of here.